The next floor leader of the Missouri House of Representatives, Representative Alex Riley from Springfield. Welcome to the show.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
What part of Springfield are you from?
Southwest Springfield.
All right. Tell folks, so the Battlefield Mall is over on the southeast side, right?
Yes, that's right.
Southwest is over by Wilson's Creek?
Over by Wilson's Creek, kind of over by Bass Pro area, a little south and west of Bass Pro.
Yep,
so that's my territory.
I always kind of charted from the Vandervoort around from Springfield.
Yep.
Big time in Springfield. Cliff Smart leaving.
That's right.
That's leaving it's got to leave just a big hole. And not just the college, but the community.
Yeah, that's right. Cliff's done a great job at Missouri State building that school up, both the academic side, the athletic side, really every piece of it. He's done a really good job in his tenure there. So we're gonna miss Cliff, and then not just for what he's done for the school, but he's been a great advocate for Springfield, a really good just member of the community, and all the other things that he advocates for, all the nonprofit work. Done a really good job. So hoping he stays engaged in helping Springfield out.
If you went into a coma 15 years ago and you woke up today, you wouldn't recognize that campus.
Yeah, that's right.
And more in the pipeline. I mean, with the ARPA money things, that there's more in the pipeline going forward. I mean, he has. You can see Cliff Smart's fingerprints all over that college.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Cliff has done really well is develop strong relationships with the legislature, with the executive branch, letting us know what his vision is for the university, why it's important for not just Springfield, but for the state as a whole, and getting a lot of buy-in from the legislature, from the entire state, about how important Missouri State is to our entire state and its ability to be successful. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been so successful in doing a lot of things to improve the campus and the programs there.
Cliff Smart's a hell of an educator, but you had an education bill that came through last week.
We did.
Probably one of the more significant pieces of legislation last 5 years, maybe. I mean, it really was a change in policy. And if I had to guess, it's the forerunner for how things are going to be. You got through the 82 votes. Take me behind the curtain here. What was it like to get those last 4 or 5 folks across the line?
Yeah, it's always exciting anytime you are dealing with one of these education bills, and anything having to do with school choice it's always tricky.
It's always exciting when the board's open and there's not 82 greens. There's a frenetic energy.
Yes, that's right. And I don't know how long the board was open. It felt like it was an eternity to me. It may have only been 2 minutes, but it felt like it was about 2 hours. I mean, it was an all hands on deck approach. You had folks from House leadership. We were holding meetings with our committee, or with our House members, to try and get to 82, talking about what was important, trying to address concerns. You had other statewide officials that were there helping out. You had both Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe and Jay Ashcroft were both helping make calls, trying to work with the legislators that they are close with, that they have relationships with.
Kehoe took a real interest in this and really twisted some arms. If I had to guess, there's some folks that support Mike Kehoe that this was a tough vote for. And I watched Kehoe. He did this on the last one. He got down in their office and personally worked people through it. Well, Kehoe deserves a game ball, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a team effort all around. So that was sort of the behind the scenes. We had been working for 2 weeks to try and, or really more, ever since that Senate bill came over to the House, to try and get to 82 votes. Every time we got close to 82, something would happen over the weekend. We'd have a few peel off, have to get them back in the fold, whether it was policy concerns or political concerns or both.
Well, it's a tough vote for life.
Yeah, that's right. But at the end of the day, I think we ended up with a really transformational package, one that recognizes, regardless of how many school choice options we have in Missouri, the vast majority of our state's kids are always going to go to public schools. And we won't ever get the most out of our kids. We won't ever receive, our state won't ever have, live up to its full potential unless we have a robust, well-funded public education system. And that bill recognized that and injected a large amount of money into our traditional public schools. It recognized that, our teachers are underpaid in Missouri.
It wasn't just your typical charter school versus public school vote. There were folks that had something to like and dislike. Everybody in the legislature did.
Every single person. That's right. And I think with the package that we ultimately passed, there weren't 82 votes to pass any one of those things by themselves. But because of combining them in the way that we did, there was a way to get to 82 votes. And that's what you saw. 79 Republicans, 3 Democrats joining together, realizing, all right, there's something in here for that that's good for my district, that's good for the state, that I like. So you had the traditional public school piece, you had the teacher pay increase, which I think was incredibly important. And then there was the realization that, no matter how great a public school system we have, there's still going to be kids in our state that fall through the cracks, that it's just for whatever reason doesn't best fit their educational needs. And for the first time in our state's history now, we have choice options available in every single county in the state for those families to take advantage of. And I think that's a huge win for all of us.
I've heard folks talk about kids with special needs, and it's probably not the forte of a charter school, but in St. Louis, in Kansas City, maybe in Springfield, it does seem like the next iteration of a charter school might be to sit and look at some special needs students. In some ways, that might be a perfect fit for, I don't know if it's a charter school, but an innovative school that just serves students with some significant. I tell you, I went to school with a gentleman with cerebral palsy, and it was obviously tough for him. But he had his own person that took every class with him and went through. That was I went to a very small school. It's a big expense, right? Another FTE is a big deal. It might even be that the next generation of a charter school would be to take a look at those special needs kids.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's a great idea.
Might even be a better fit, even in some ways.
For sure. And I know some of the biggest advocates for school choice that I've ever met are families that have kids with various types of disabilities. So there's definitely a need out there for something like that.
You did another bill. He had a busy week last week.
We did.
Dane Deal, good guy. He came in. He's kind of been like a wrecking ball. I mean, he's just the guy that wants to take the hill. He had a bill about pesticides. It's funny. You hear all this talk about selling farmland to China. And I guess I'm just a simple hillbilly, but if you sold an acre of ground in Butler County to a Chinese man, I don't know if you declare war on China, what he's going to do with that land. You're probably going to take it, right? But it is a simple fact that if Bayer stops making Roundup, the only place you'll get it's from China. If they turn that tap off, the entire farm now is built around being able to use Roundup and Roundup type products to control pests, to control herbicides. There's pesticides in the same vein, but if China turns that tap off, you can't grow food here. It is a much bigger anti-China issue than anything to do with a piece of land. And you guys passed that out with a pretty good margin.
Yeah, so we perfected it. We haven't taken the third read vote yet,
okay.
So I believe we will likely do that this week. And that's right. So it's a critically important bill for the state, especially for our agriculture community. This is a product that they rely on, they use all the time. So what this bill does is it tries to help address really some of the egregious lawsuit abuses that we've seen around the country with this particular product against companies like Bayer, and create some safeguards in that litigation process where you're not cutting off the ability for someone to file a lawsuit. That's
Sure.
not true. And I know that's one of the things that the opposition is running around saying, that if you pass this bill, you're going to prevent anyone from ever suing Bayer that ever again. And that's just not true. What it does is it makes some adjustments to the types of claims that can be filed in the future. Has nothing to do with the claims that have already been filed, but it will help make some reforms to future claims that are brought in a way to make the system more fair and in a way to protect Missouri agriculture.
So tell me about the floor leaders race. It looked like there was a race, and now it looks like, I guess there's no actually announced opponent yet, which is a hell of an accomplishment.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So for a while there, my good friend Jamie Berger and I were running against each other. He ultimately decided to pursue another opportunity running for the state Senate in his home Senate district. So in the meantime, he and I have worked closely together on the floor leaders race to try and make sure that our coalitions were rowing the same boat, basically. And I think that's good for the caucus for a number of reasons. Yeah, obviously, from a personal, selfish level, I'm happy not to have a super contentious floor leaders race. I think that that's obviously nice. I think it's also good though for our House caucus as a whole, because the entire time that I've been in the House, I know prior to the time I arrived in the House, we had some pretty contentious leadership elections that divided the caucus in a number of ways.
I think it's more important now than ever. I mean, you're the dog that caught the car on this abortion issue. You've got the law like you want it. I don't know the public's tickled with it. I think if you look at other states, even some more Republican than we are, that was not popular with the voters. You have an issue where you've won so many seats. You're so far expanded at what you probably even should be. Now you have this abortion issue that has turned voters in other parts of the country. I think not having a contentious leadership race may be more important now because, I mean, even if you do a good job, you're going to lose a few seats.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So I think one of the things that really is helpful for us going forward is without having this contentious race. You know, in the past, you've had a good chunk of the caucus that goes in mad for what, you know, because of how the leadership race went. You have a good chunk of the caucus that already voted against the floor leader and all the political dynamic that is involved with that situation, which can be really messy. To go into this next session without having that sort of situation, I think is good for the caucus. We have enough that divides us on policy fronts already. So taking a divisive leadership race off the table where it can be something that's more of a unifying front, I think is helpful for our caucus and helpful for our ability to govern over the next 2 years.
It's probably the first time since 2008 that you've faced one. I think Crystal Quaid from Springfield has done a great job of taking that caucus and their political operation from non-existent to they are someone that can put on a competent race. They are someone that can raise some money to help a candidate. Now you have an issue in abortion. It's going to be a pretty strong headwind. It is probably the first time in maybe 15, 16 years you're actually looking at having to work this thing. It's not just going to be because you're the Republicans. The Democrats will cough it up to you. I think it's going to be a much harder fall than it has been in a long time. And not having that effort, you know, when you're able to go help close seats instead of having to go to all your current members, I think that's going to free up a lot of time, probably resources too.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be dealing with a lot of extremely competitive seats this cycle. I think one of the things I'm very excited about, though, is for the competitive incumbents that we are trying to protect, we have a lot of really strong incumbents, people like Brad Criss, Ben Keithley. Some of the sharpest minds in the House of Representatives are in those competitive seats. And then in the open seats, our new HRCC director did an absolutely phenomenal job recruiting candidates this cycle.
Primary, though, I mean, it just comes normally in most of these seats. Okay, the Republican. So you have one Republican. One will be a better legislator. One will be a better Facebook poster. Whoever wins, the Republicans are going to win. You'll figure it out later. I'm not sure some of these districts in the suburbs, you probably need a good candidate.
Yeah.
How do you? It's got to be on one hand, you got to say, oh my gosh, we have to get involved and help this guy because he'd win the general. It would save us a ton of money in the fall if this guy's a nominee. But then do you want to get involved? It's a tough call, right? To get involved in a primary, it's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us this cycle, the good thing is in most of these extremely competitive seats, we don't have primaries. There are a couple that have some primaries that we're watching closely. And yes, there's probably one candidate and some of those that would be a better general election candidate than the other. But that's going to be helpful for us in not having those contentious primaries.
Some of the best work I saw Hannah do, probably when you look back on this whole cycle, is avoiding some of those contentious primaries in seats you got to win.
That's right.
And I think that was a good job.
Yep.
So floor leader, what do you want to do with the House? When you leave, what's something you want to see done?
You know, one of my main message when I decided to run, and it remains the same today, is I want the House and the legislature and state government as a whole to get back to focusing on policy and not petty personalities. When I was running around the state, meeting with legislators in their home districts, I made each of them a promise, and this is a promise that I am going to uphold and keep. And that was whatever my personal opinion of you as an individual or whatever doesn't matter. What's going to dictate whether your bill has a chance to come to the floor, get a vote, is based on policy. It has nothing to do with whether I like you, whether you voted for me in the floor leaders race. It's going to be, is this a bill that moves Missouri forward, that's consistent with our conservative Republican principles? And if the answer to those types of questions are yes, then you're going to have a chance to move your bill forward. So it has nothing to do with petty politics.
Kelton, he's a better guy than me. I would just be like, oh, if I like you, you're in. If not, get out. We're not doing your stuff. That's why it's good that people like you are running for this stuff. Let's talk about the budget. It's been a bit of a heavy lift, I would say, as a House member, watching the Senate do pretty well the last half decade. What can you do going forward to have the House assert themselves more in that process?
You know, that's a fair question. I think a lot of it has to do with the relationships that our in existence between the House, between the Senate. I think a lot of it has to do with open dialogue and communication throughout the budget process. I think it's preferable.
Sometimes the dialogue also with your fellow Democrat colleagues.
Sure.
Seems like where this process breaks is you don't treat them very well, then of course they sell you out in conference. That does seems like the and you have a new floor leader coming in for them.
Yep.
I'd say more than likely Ashley Ani, somebody that I think is reasonable. I can sit down and talk to. That seems to me like it would seem to me the House would want to tweak something about their approach.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that where we currently have it's a fairly siloed situation where the House is doing what it's going to do,
and you all vote for Lincoln to get rid of Lincoln, so you don't have to deal with him anymore.
There you go. And then the Senate's doing what they're going to do, and then there's not a lot of communication until the 2 or 3 days for conference. I think that makes it challenging. So I think that creating that dialogue and transparency and some trust between the leadership of the chambers as well as the budget and appropriations chairs would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, that does make some, and there's got to be some horse trading can be done. I mean, with other legislation or something. There just seems to be an approach that it feels like your members could assert themselves more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that process. Let's talk about the staff. It was like, it's almost like COVID to me talking about this House ethics thing. I'm just kind of over talking about it and COVID. A member told me, one of your more president, there is no honor being vindicated by this committee. There's no shame in it. It's just, we're all just done. There is a question going forward. I've asked this to people. I've got many different answers. Who's your staff person right now?
Tim Burke.
It's Tim Burke. Right now, I'm not sure anyone knows who Tim Burke actually works for.
Mm-hmm.
It is my take that you guys are going to sit down at some point. Some guy, you, the floor leader, and you're gonna review the procedures, right? When that gets done next year, who will Tim Burke work for?
I think that every staff member should work for the representative that hired them.
God, that makes sense, doesn't it? The Senate does not have this drama,
right?
And the Senate, but you know who you work for. If you know the brass tacks, Ashley Backs works for Justin Brown, and if somehow that doesn't work out, he fires her. There's no drama.
The fact that there is a question over a representative's hiring and firing power is extremely problematic. Every representative, whether you're a Republican representative or a Democrat representative, should have the power to hire the person that they want to hire. And if some concerns have arisen, it doesn't work out, then they should be able to let that person go without it being some big controversial thing down in the HR department.
Republicans have worked hard to make this an at-will employment state.
Right.
Very hard.
That's right.
And very successfully.
That's right.
So either you like it or you don't, right? Practice what you preach. All this other stuff, I honestly think no one cares now. No one's going to care in January. But I do think it is. I think if you look at the Senate, they do not have these problems. The staff, the kids kind of mind their own business, or they mind their boss's business. And I just think that might be, you might be able to go and save yourself a lot of drama by just that little simple tweak. And that just makes sense to me.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that that's something that's going to have broad support
from
the Republican caucus, from the Democrat caucus, for sure.
Because you get a guy, John Patterson, yourself, you're professionals. You're not going to be. It would shock me if you went on some partisan vendetta that's personal, but you're not always going to be there. And you get the right speaker in the right situation, and let's fire their staff. If it's up to the clerk, who's there by the will of the majority. I think it's more important for Democrats to support you on that than Republicans.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to roll you, but they might roll Michelle Brent in Crystal Quaid's office. That could happen in another world, you know. So anyhow, let's talk about HRCC. I would say right now you lose 5 seats. That's a break-even year, right? I mean, you're overstretched. You've been overly successful. You have an abortion thing. You're in a long year with the majority. You've got Trump on the national level for the 3rd time. I don't think anybody gets more popular the more times they run for president. You got real headwinds this time. How do you push them back and lose 4? Let's say. What is the number in your head? If we hit this, that's okay. If we hit this, that's good.
Well, I don't want to lose any seats. I think that I mean, that's my goal. I don't want to lose seats. And yes, you are 100% correct that this is going to be a challenging year.
That would be gold star 10 on 10.
Right. Whether that's something that we can do, we'll see a little bit closer to Election Day. We don't know what the national climate is going to look like. We don't know if it's going to be some kind of red wave. We don't know if it's going to be a blue wave. We don't know if it's just going to be a really razor tight margin. At this point, any of those three look to be possibilities in my mind. So
we
I
would
think
have thought red wave this time 2 years ago, right?
That's right.
And it maybe was a red ripple.
Maybe at best.
Yeah.
So at this point, I don't know that we can say with any certainty what November is going to look like. I think that our job in the meantime is job one was to recruit the best candidates that we can in each of these competitive seats. We did that.
You got a good, I would say you have an advantage over the Democrats in recruits.
I agree. Job two now is raising as much money as we can. So we have the war chest that it takes to win these competitive seats, regardless of what we're having to deal with at the national level. And you're right.
Is the Senate anarchy making that tougher?
Maybe.
You have two groups of Republicans in the Senate. I'm seeing some groups think we have to get engaged in this and help Senate primaries. Is some of that money coming at the expense of HRCC in your efforts?
Maybe. We will find out over the course of the next few months if that is a factor or not.
You're going to need your A game, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But we're off to a good start on the fundraising side. Hannah Beer-Sutton, again, did a great job in the first quarter, as really she was just trying to figure out the lay of the land. While she was just trying to get it all figured out, she recruited a top-notch recruiting class and raised a whole bunch of money. Now she's able to focus almost entirely her efforts this coming quarter on fundraising. I think we're going to have a really strong fundraising quarter, and then that will position us for the battle ahead in November. So I'm optimistic, even with Trump on the ballot. That is an issue in some of the suburban districts, with abortion on the ballot, or likely on the ballot. We'll find out for sure in a couple weeks. That's going to be tricky in some of these suburban districts. But historically, House Republicans have outperformed the top of the ticket.
Yep.
So even with that, as long as we are able to put our best foot forward, put in the resources to win these tough seats, have hardworking candidates that are able to focus their message on the unique issues in their district, whether that's crime, the economy, inflation, those types of things, that's going to give us a real chance, I think, to overperform expectations in November. And then we'll see what the national climate looks like a little closer to Election Day.
Boy, as the last question, we want to thank our folks at United Fiber, letting us visit with folks like Alex Riley. Appreciate that. And obviously, if you're coming to Jeff City and you have a major recruit you're wanting to run, where do you put them up at?
I mean, the Marriott.
Yeah, you got Corey up. He knows what's up. That recruiting class didn't just happen. That was work. Last question. Give me a couple recruits right now that you have that you think are likely to be here in January that folks should start keeping an eye on.
Yeah, so Jim Robinette in Springfield running against Stephanie Hine. He's a top-notch recruit.
Tough race. I like that.
Tough race. Went to.
You're going to leave Betsy alone this time?
We'll see. We'll see. Betsy's a strong candidate for sure. She's represented her district.
Well, that seat's a new pickup, bro. That's been Republican for a long time. Yeah. Where is that in Springfield?
So that seat is in the southeast corner of Springfield.
So that's Battlefield Mall area.
Yeah.
Sports Hall of Fame.
You got it. That's right. That's right. So Jim Robinette, who's running there, is a West Point graduate.
I read that name.
Notre Dame Law School. Really impeccable resume. It's going to work really hard. He's a top-notch recruit. And then Mike Jones in the Northland, Kansas City area is another one that's gonna.
So you're not just talking about holding seats; those are flips.
I think we have an opportunity because of our strong recruitment to.
Robinette's a big deal.
Win some of those.
I've heard great things about Mike Jones. Alex Riley, thank you so much. Congratulations on your success. Look forward to watching the last few weeks of session. And then I'd love to come out and bring the F-150 and go look at some of these seats with you.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks for having me today.
We'll be right back tomorrow. I don't know the time yet. We're going to bring you a consultant, kind of do what we do with Barclay on some of these state Senate primaries. We'll see you tomorrow, and then we'll see you Sunday with Mike Searpoy and Mike Hafner.